Comment on the video, where are people watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. In the opening segment of the narrative, Reggie Dubosi introduces himself with an immediacy and candor that immediately draw the reader into his unusual plight. Reggie begins by sharing his remarkable and inconvenient experience of being sued for $224,000, an exorbitant sum levied by the HOA president, known simply as Karen. This introduction serves to instantly set the tone for a story that blends elements of personal injustice with the overreach of bureaucratic authority. Reggie's introduction is compelling because it juxtaposes his everyday life against an extraordinary legal and administrative conflict. He describes his decision to install solar panels on his roof, an environmentally progressive act meant to reduce energy costs and benefit his home, only to have it turned into the cause of a major lawsuit. Crucially, Reggie emphasizes that he is not even part of the HOA, yet he finds himself entangled in its enforcement mechanisms. This contradiction, being penalized by an organization of which he is not a member, immediately highlights the arbitrary and intrusive nature of the HOA's power. Karen's role in this opening is particularly significant. As the HOA president, Karen is portrayed as a strict enforcer, someone who appears to wield her authority with little regard for common sense or fairness. Her decision to sue Reggie for such an astronomical fine over the solar panels underscores a broader theme: the exercise of power by local authorities can, at times, be disproportionate and misdirected. The fact that the lawsuit is initiated over something as beneficial and progressive as solar energy makes the narrative even more ironic. It suggests that Karen's enforcement is less about maintaining community order and more about asserting control and perhaps even personal vendetta. Another notable element in Part 1 is the way Reggie's tone and language invite the reader into his experience. His narration is straightforward yet laced with subtle humor and disbelief. He presents his case as both a personal setback and a challenge to the established order. By framing his account with a touch of humor, even in the face of a lawsuit for over $224,000, Reggie positions himself as an underdog, a common citizen standing up against an overreaching institution. The introduction also sets up key thematic questions that the narrative will explore further. What are the limits of HOA power, and how can such authority be misused? Is it fair for someone who is not even a member of the HOA to be held accountable by its rules? And, perhaps most importantly, how does one fight back against a system that enforces its regulations with an iron fist, even when those regulations seem out of touch with modern values like sustainability? Reggie Dubosi, an innovator with a penchant for sustainability, had recently taken on a project to install solar panels on his roof. Convinced that embracing renewable energy was both an economic and environmental boon, he eagerly set out to integrate cutting-edge solar technology into his home. However, the installation process turned into an unexpected battleground from the very start. While carefully mounting the solar panels and aligning them to capture the maximum rays of the sun, Reggie was abruptly confronted by Beatrice B. Buttersworth, the notoriously strict HOA president. With a steely glare and an authoritative tone, Buttersworth demanded that Reggie immediately cease his installation. "You're in violation of HOA rules," she declared, citing an astronomical fine of $224,000 for what she claimed was an infraction, despite the fact that Reggie was not even a member of the HOA. Reggie tried to explain that his home was not subject to the HOA's restrictive covenants and that the solar panels were installed following all state-approved guidelines. Yet, Buttersworth was unyielding. Her face hardened as she reiterated that the panels not only marred the neighborhood's aesthetic but also disrupted the established order that she was determined to preserve. She pointed to a printed notice, which she produced on the spot, demanding that Reggie remove the panels or face the steep financial penalty. The encounter was as surreal as it was vexing. Reggie found himself caught between his commitment to sustainable energy and the unreasonable demands of an overzealous enforcer. As he looked up at the gleaming panels that reflected the midday sun, he wondered how such a progressive upgrade could spark such hostility. For Buttersworth, every element of home improvement had to conform to a rigid, often arbitrary, set of aesthetic and operational standards. For Reggie, the panels were a symbol of forward thinking and an essential investment in the future, a fact that she seemed determined to ignore. Despite Buttersworth's fury and her threat of the staggering fine, Reggie maintained his composure. His mind raced through possible legal and bureaucratic avenues to counter her claim, but in that heated moment, he could only express his disbelief. He promised to gather all relevant documentation, including state permits and technical specifications, to demonstrate that his installation was fully compliant with all applicable regulations. Yet, the confrontation had already set the stage for a prolonged battle over what really constituted an infraction in a modern, sustainable society. As the meeting ended in a stalemate, Reggie left with a mixture of determination and frustration, aware that this conflict was only just beginning. The solar panel installation, an endeavor meant to secure his energy future, had now become the spark that would ignite a broader struggle against outdated and overbearing local authority. Not long after the solar panel confrontation, Reggie Dubosi found himself facing even more aggressive posturing from Beatrice B. Buttersworth. In this new phase, her rhetoric escalated from admonition to overt threats of legal action, threats that Reggie considered absurd given the facts of the case. During a follow-up conversation, Reggie attempted once again to explain his exemption from the HOA. He noted that his home, along with the installation of his solar panels, fell under state jurisdiction. However, Buttersworth was unmoved. With a cold, dismissive tone, she declared that she would not hesitate to involve county officials and even a lawyer if Reggie did not comply immediately with her demands. In her mind, her authority was absolute, and any deviation had to be punished severely. Even if the alleged infraction was rooted in an arbitrary interpretation of the rules. Her threat resonated as both a personal and bureaucratic imposition. Reggie listened as she detailed how she had already spoken to legal advisors about his situation, mentioning a soon-to-be-appointed attorney who would handle the case against him. The language she used was chillingly formal, as if she were initiating a legal process rather than simply enforcing local standards. For Reggie, this was not just overreach, it was a deliberate attempt to intimidate him into submission. What made the situation even more surreal was the knowledge that Reggie's solar installation was not only legal but also part of a forward-thinking, sustainable energy initiative. His installation had been performed with meticulous attention to state codes and environmental guidelines. Yet, Buttersworth's threat suggested she would use every tool in her arsenal. The full force of legal action, the weight of county regulation, to compel him to remove what she considered an eyesore and a violation, regardless of its merits. As the conversation progressed, Reggie could feel his resolve hardening. Despite the heavy legal threats, he remained convinced of the righteousness of his actions. He reassured himself that he would soon expose the fallacies in Buttersworth's claims through proper channels. Her reference to a lawyer, a tactic aimed solely at intimidating him, only further reinforced his commitment to gathering evidence and seeking an impartial review of his case. The encounter left Reggie both mentally and emotionally charged. Every word from Buttersworth, with its air of unchallengeable authority, served as a catalyst for him to delve deeper into the regulations governing solar installations. He began compiling permits, technical documents, and state-approved guidelines, determined to build a robust defense. What had once been a simple act of upgrading his home had now become a battle for the right to innovate free from arbitrary oppression. In the end, the threat of legal action was less an assertion of justice and more an expression of Buttersworth's desperate need to maintain control. Reggie's reaction was a quiet promise to himself: he would stand firm and prove that progress and sustainability could not be stifled by outdated, petty regulations. This confrontation marked a significant turning point, setting Reggie on a path toward not only defending his rights but also challenging the very mechanisms of power that had long haunted his neighborhood. In the wake of Karen's threats and the escalating legal drama, the situation took an unexpectedly bizarre turn for Reggie Dubosi. Determined to confront the looming legal action, Reggie sought assurance about the lawyer who was supposedly representing the HOA's interests. He had been told that a renowned attorney, Mr. Bartholomew Chumley, would be handling the case against him. However, as Reggie began to dig deeper into the matter, he soon discovered that things were not as they appeared. One afternoon, while waiting for a scheduled meeting that was meant to discuss the impending legal action, Reggie encountered a peculiar figure outside a busy subway station near his neighborhood. The man was dressed in ragged clothing, his demeanor unkempt yet strangely familiar. As he listened from a distance, Reggie was astonished to overhear the man softly singing an old tune, a tune that seemed to echo the struggles of the common folk. This unexpected performance piqued Reggie's curiosity, and he decided to approach the man to inquire about his identity. After a brief exchange, the man introduced himself not as Mr. Bartholomew Chumley, but as Barry Higgins, a local character known to some as a wandering troubadour and, more recently, as a homeless man who frequented the subway. Reggie's interest turned to suspicion as Barry's unpolished manner and the casual way he sang old blues melodies clashed sharply with the refined image of a high-powered attorney. Reggie pressed him further, questioning whether he had ever been employed by any legal firm and if he truly represented the HOA in its dispute over the solar panels. To his shock, Barry hesitated before confessing the truth. In a moment of candid vulnerability, Barry admitted that he had indeed been paid to impersonate a lawyer. According to Barry, a small sum of cash and a few promises of later compensation were enough to convince him to assume the role of Mr. Bartholomew Chumley for a limited time. His explanation was punctuated with a rueful smile, as if he were both embarrassed and amused by the situation. Reggie listened, his initial disbelief gradually giving way to a sense of grim satisfaction. He realized that Karen's threat of legal action was being bolstered by nothing more than a farcical impersonation, a charade designed to scare him with the specter of expensive litigation. Armed with this revelation, Reggie began to gather further evidence of the hoax. He recorded his conversation with Barry, ensuring that every word was captured. The recording revealed Barry's unmistakable accent and the informality of his language, details that were entirely inconsistent with the polished rhetoric expected of a legitimate lawyer. Reggie also managed to obtain a copy of a handwritten note from Barry, outlining the terms of his contract and confirming that he was, in fact, a hired imposter. This discovery not only undermined Karen's credibility but also provided Reggie with an irrefutable blow against the absurdity of the lawsuit. The idea that the HOA, under Karen's leadership, would stoop to such deceitful tactics underscored the broader abuse of power that had been a recurring theme ever since the solar panels were installed. Reggie's investigation into the lawyer's credentials exposed a layer of corruption and mendacity at the heart of the HOA's operation, a stark reminder that those entrusted with enforcing rules were not always as competent or honest as they claimed to be. In the wake of Barry's confession, Reggie felt a mixture of vindication and resolve. The revelation confirmed his suspicions that the entire legal threat was nothing more than an elaborate ruse. He immediately set about compiling the recording and the handwritten note into a comprehensive file, ensuring that this evidence would be used to dismantle Karen's case in future legal proceedings. The farce of Mr. Bartholomew Chumley became a potent symbol of the HOA's ridiculous overreach. An embodiment of everything that was fundamentally flawed with the organization's methods. By the end of that fateful day, Reggie Dubosi had transformed the narrative. What had begun as a threatening legal battle was now exposed for the sham that it was. With the false lawyer unmasked as Barry Higgins, an ordinary, homeless man with a talent for song and a penchant for falling on hard times, Reggie knew he had a powerful tool to expose the mismanagement of the HOA. This discovery set him firmly on the path toward not only defending himself but also holding the entire HOA accountable for its farcical and abusive practices. Armed with the damning evidence of the fake lawyer's true identity, Reggie Dubosi was determined to confront the nefarious scheme orchestrated by the HOA, led by the ever-assertive Karen. The day following his shocking discovery, Reggie marched straight to the local police department with his complete dossier in hand. His aim was clear. Expose the fraud and extortion employed by the HOA and bring accountability to those who had tried to intimidate him with legal threats that were nothing more than a ruse. At the police station, Reggie met with Detective Molly Pike, a sharp, no-nonsense investigator known for her fair-minded approach. He laid out his story in detail, the installation of solar panels on his roof, the ensuing lawsuit demanding a $224,000 fine from a non-member, and the subsequent threat of legal action enforced by an impersonated lawyer, Mr. Bartholomew Chumley. Every piece of evidence, including the recording of Barry Higgins' confession and the handwritten contract that confirmed his role as a fake lawyer, was presented meticulously. Reggie's tone was measured but resolute, his voice unwavering as he recounted how Karen had used these tools to extort him. Detective Pike listened intently, her brow furrowing as the details of the scheme unfolded. With each piece of evidence Reggie provided, the gravity of the situation became increasingly clear. The detective asked pointed questions to clarify timelines and the specific nature of the communications between Reggie and the imposter. In response, Reggie confidently explained every detail, from the initial confrontation regarding his solar panel installation to the moment he discovered the true identity of the supposed attorney. Detective Pike's investigative skills soon revealed the extent of the fraudulent operation. After a thorough review of the evidence, she decided that the case against Karen needed to be escalated. Reggie's documentation not only demonstrated extortion but also betrayed a clear violation of ethical standards on the part of the HOA. The detective informed Reggie that she would open a formal investigation into Karen's practices, particularly the use of a fake lawyer to intimidate a homeowner over a matter that was, by all legal accounts, entirely above board. As part of the investigation, Detective Pike visited Reggie's residence to inspect the solar panel installation and verify the accompanying permits and approvals that Reggie had so carefully maintained. She confirmed that all installations were legally compliant with state environmental and building codes. This on-site inspection served as further corroboration of Reggie's claims, effectively neutralizing Karen's justification for the exorbitant fine. Meanwhile, word of the investigation began to spread quietly through the community. Neighbors, who had long harbored doubts about the HOA's increasingly autocratic measures, started to take notice. The exposé on the fake lawyer, now a turning point in the narrative, was shared in hushed conversations and across local social media channels. Many were shocked that Karen would resort to such deceit, falsely presenting an imposter as a legal authority in order to bully a resident out of compliance. Detective Pike assured Reggie that the investigation would extend to include a review of all relevant interactions between Karen and other homeowners, as there were rumors of similar tactics being used against others in the community. Reggie's detailed files and recordings were placed at the center of this probe, and within days, the police department confirmed that Karen's actions constituted fraud and attempted extortion. As the meeting at the station drew to a close, Reggie felt a sense of grim satisfaction. His decision to confront the scheme and present hard evidence had now set in motion a chain of events that would hold the HOA, and especially Karen, accountable. Detective Pike's commitment to follow through on the investigation gave him hope that justice would prevail. Although the atmosphere was somber, there was a palpable sense of progress, as the long shadow of arbitrary power began to recede in the light of truth. Leaving the police station, Reggie knew that his battle was only just beginning. With the investigation underway and the evidence indisputable, he was now prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. His relentless pursuit of justice promised not only to vindicate his own cause but also to send a resounding message to an HOA that had long abused its power. The shock waves from the investigation quickly reverberated throughout Sunnyside Acres, drawing widespread public attention to the scandal that had engulfed the community. Not long after Detective Mallory Pike's formal investigation into Karen's scheme was launched, local news outlets began picking up the story, and the once-hidden drama burst into the public spotlight. Footage from Reggie Dubosse's confrontation, including the recording that unmasked Mr. Bartholomew Chumley, as Barry Higgins, rapidly went viral. Social media exploded with outrage as hashtags praising Reggie's tenacity and ridiculing Karen's authoritarian tactics trended locally. The narrative was clear: Karen, the supposed guardian of community standards at the HOA, had engaged in fraudulent extortion by employing a fake lawyer to intimidate a homeowner over a simple solar panel installation. As the story spread, communities across the region began to scrutinize the very foundations of HOA authority. Local bloggers and community forums buzzed with discussions about the misuse of power, and many residents, previously too intimidated to speak out, now found their voices. Video clips captured during the incident were shared widely, each rehashing the absurdity of the fine and the audacity of the threat. Comments ranged from incredulous laughter to impassioned calls for reform, and the collective sentiment coalesced around the demand for greater transparency and accountability in the HOA. Reggie quickly became a local hero in this unfolding drama. Neighbors who had long suffered under the arbitrary fines and heavy-handed enforcement practices rallied behind him, expressing their support both online and in person. At community gatherings in local coffee shops and town centers, snippets of the viral footage sparked conversations that gradually shifted public opinion. People began to question why the HOA, led by figures like Karen, was allowed to act with impunity, even resorting to devious tactics such as hiring an imposter lawyer to scare residents into compliance. Alongside the online outcry, traditional media amplified the story. Local TV news broadcasts featured segments on the scandal, interviewing residents who expressed a mix of disbelief and relief that someone had finally taken a stand against the overreach of HOA authority. As the media delved deeper into the details, more evidence emerged that further discredited Karen's claims. Photographs, emails, and official documents corroborated Reggie's version of events, leaving little doubt that the lawsuit and fines were unfounded. Amid the public exposure, even Barry Higgins, the man behind the fake legal persona, came forward to express his own relief. In a brief, heartfelt interview with a local reporter, Barry thanked Reggie for helping him reclaim his dignity and for exposing the fraudulent practices that had ensnared him. His testimony added a human element to the scandal, underscoring how Karen's actions had hurt not only homeowners but also individuals who had been unwittingly exploited. The backlash against Karen grew more intense with each passing day. Social media campaigns demanded her resignation, and pressure mounted on the HOA board to overhaul its enforcement policies. Community members organized protests and town hall meetings, demanding an end to the arbitrary use of fines and a return to fairness and common sense. The viral spread of the story had turned Reggie's personal battle into a community-wide movement, one that was shaking the foundations of the very institution that had once been considered untouchable. The public exposure of Karen's tactics thus marked a turning point, a moment when the collective outrage of the community finally forced even the most entrenched figures of authority to confront their abuses of power. For Reggie, the media attention was a double-edged sword. It validated his fight for justice while also ensuring that every misstep by the HOA would be scrutinized by the public eye. The narrative was no longer just about one solar panel installation or one fraudulent lawyer. It had become a symbol of the larger struggle for transparency, fairness, and accountability in local governance. The fallout from the public exposure soon reached its climactic point in a high-stakes courtroom drama that would determine the fate of the rogue HOA president, Beatrice B. Buttersworth. The trial, highly anticipated by the residents of Sunnyside Acres and closely followed by local media, centered on charges of fraud and extortion levied against Buttersworth. In the courtroom, the stage was set for a showdown between the emboldened homeowner, Reggie Dubosi, and the once-feared enforcer of HOA rules. Reggie took the stand with a demeanor marked by calm determination. He began by recounting the sequence of events, a narrative that started with his installation of solar panels and the subsequent conflict with Buttersworth over a purported violation. His testimony was supported by an array of meticulously organized evidence, including photographs of the solar panels in place, screenshots of threatening emails, and most damning of all, the recording in which Barry Higgins, posing as Mr. Bartholomew Chumley, admitted to being paid to impersonate a lawyer. Every piece of evidence was presented in clear, chronological order, painting an incontrovertible picture of a deliberate ruse designed to extort money from an innocent homeowner. Barry Higgins was called as a key witness in the case. His appearance in court was unassuming, yet his testimony carried a weight that resonated with the entire courtroom. Barry recounted his experience in vivid detail, admitting that he had once been hired by Buttersworth to bolster her threat of legal action. He revealed the specifics of how he was compensated and the extent of the instructions given to him, an account that left no room for ambiguity regarding the fraudulent nature of his role. As Barry spoke, the tension in the courtroom heightened. His words transformed the narrative from one of petty local disputes into a full-blown exposé of corruption and abuse of power. Buttersworth's defense, meanwhile, crumbled under the relentless accumulation of evidence. Her attempts to justify the $224,000 fine and frame Reggie's solar installation as a severe violation proved utterly unconvincing. Despite her efforts to present herself as a stern guardian of community standards, the testimony and documentation laid bare her overreach. Reggie's attorney argued persuasively that not only was the fine baseless, but the entire legal threat had been orchestrated to intimidate and extract money from him. Throughout the trial, dramatic exchanges punctuated the proceedings. At one point, a heated argument erupted between Reggie's counsel and Buttersworth's legal team over the interpretation of HOA regulations and state energy codes. The judge, maintaining an air of impartiality, allowed each side ample time to present their case but was visibly swayed by the precise and fact-based presentation laid out by Reggie and his attorney. As testimony after testimony piled up, the jury began to appear increasingly sympathetic to Reggie's plight. Their expressions conveyed not only an understanding of the absurdity of the situation but also a growing outrage at the prospect of such tyrannical behavior being tolerated in a modern community. By the final day of the trial, it was clear that the balance of public sentiment, and legal reasoning, was tipping decisively in Reggie's favor. In a moment that epitomized the gravity of the proceedings, the judge delivered his verdict. The charges against Buttersworth were upheld, and she was convicted on all counts of fraud and extortion. The sentence, though relatively short at 6 months in jail, was regarded as a symbolic victory, a strong rebuke against the abuse of power in local governance. The courtroom erupted in subdued applause as the decision was read, marking the conclusion of a trial that had far exceeded the boundaries of a mere property dispute. For Reggie, the courtroom victory was a personal triumph as well as a watershed moment for the community. His methodical gathering of evidence, his resolve to stand up to arbitrary authority, and the bold testimony of witnesses like Barry had not only overturned an unjust fine but had also sent a clear message: no individual's rights would be trampled by the unchecked power of an HOA. As the proceedings drew to a close, the collective mood was one of vindication and hope, a belief that the principles of fairness and justice could prevail even in the face of corruption. In the wake of the trial's dramatic conclusion and the public outcry that followed, the power dynamics within the community of Sunnyside Acres shifted dramatically. With Beatrice B. Buttersworth now a convicted fraudster and extortionist, the HOA was left in a state of disarray. Recognizing the need for change, the residents began rallying for new leadership, someone who would uphold the community's true interests rather than enforce arbitrary rules. As the dust settled, Reggie Dubosie's role in the entire saga took on new significance. Having stood up for himself and exposed the corrupt practices of the former HOA president, Reggie emerged as a natural candidate for leadership. With overwhelming support from his neighbors, he was elected as the new HOA president. In his inauguration speech, Reggie promised to overhaul the restrictive architectural regulations that had long stifled innovation and personal freedom within Sunnyside Acres. One of his first acts as president was to formally repeal the draconian rules that had been so rigorously enforced under Buttersworth's reign. Among the bold new policies he introduced was the celebration of renewable energy, a solar panel appreciation day, designed not only to honor sustainable living but also to signify a new era in the community's approach to home improvement. Reggie's initiatives aimed to encourage residents to invest in environmentally friendly solutions, marking a stark departure from the outdated practices of the past. Under Reggie's leadership, community meetings became lively forums for open dialogue. He fostered an atmosphere of inclusivity by inviting all residents to participate in discussions about neighborhood improvements. His transparent style and willingness to consider diverse perspectives quickly earned him admiration and trust across Sunnyside Acres. The transformation was palpable. Where once strict enforcement and intimidation reigned, there was now a sense of shared purpose and optimism. In embracing the role of HOA president, Reggie had also set an example of resilience and integrity. His journey, from being sued for an exorbitant fine over solar panels to leading a reformed HOA, was celebrated by residents as a triumph of the individual over bureaucratic oppression. For many, Reggie represented the idea that standing up to unjust authority could lead to real, positive change. Though the path forward was not without challenges, the early signs of progress were undeniable. New policies were swiftly implemented, and there was even talk of additional community events aimed at promoting sustainable energy use and neighborhood camaraderie. Reggie's tenure promised to redefine what it meant to be part of an HOA, one where rules were fair, regulations made sense, and individual rights were protected. The election of Reggie Dubosi as HOA president marked not just a personal victory but the beginning of an era of renewal in Sunnyside Acres. With new leadership in place, the community looked forward to a future where collaborative decision-making replaced authoritarian mandates, and where the spirit of innovation and sustainability could flourish. As Reggie Dubosi settled into his role as the new HOA president, the transformation in Sunnyside Acres became increasingly evident. Reggie's innovative policies, emphasizing renewable energy, transparency, and community participation, ignited a wave of optimism among residents. The neighborhood, once stifled by outdated restrictions and oppressive rules, now buzzed with possibilities for growth and change. Reggie's first major initiative was the celebration of Solar Panel Appreciation Day, an event designed not only to honor sustainable living but to educate and inspire his neighbors about the benefits of renewable energy. The day was marked by communal gatherings, where residents exchanged ideas on energy conservation and eco-friendly practices. The celebration quickly became a symbol of the new era Reggie had ushered in, a time when progress and innovation were embraced rather than punished. Amid this rejuvenation, a sense of karma began to weave through the community. The fallout from the long reign of Beatrice B. Buttersworth was now a thing of the past. Her fraudulent practices and heavy-handed tactics had left a bitter legacy, but her downfall had also opened the door to restorative change. As residents began to experience the benefits of fair governance, many expressed gratitude toward Reggie for challenging the status quo and paving the way for a more just community. Even Barry Higgins, the once impoverished man who had been roped into the scheme as a fake lawyer, found his circumstances taking a positive turn. Inspired by the new environment and bolstered by community support, Barry managed to secure a job and even enrolled in night classes to further his education. His transformation became a powerful symbol of redemption, a living example of how even those at society's margins could be uplifted when justice prevailed. For Reggie, the period following his election was not just about administrative reforms but about cultivating a vibrant community spirit. Neighbors began collaborating on various projects, improving common areas, organizing block parties, and establishing neighborhood watch initiatives that focused on solidarity rather than fear. The air of distrust that had long pervaded Sunnyside Acres was gradually replaced by mutual respect and shared goals. The financial and cultural revitalization was mirrored by tangible improvements in the physical landscape. Lawns were mended, streets cleaned, and public spaces transformed into welcoming areas where residents could gather and celebrate their renewed sense of community. The once oppressive atmosphere was lifted, replaced by an energetic confidence that future challenges could be met together. Reggie's leadership brought more than just policy changes, it ignited a profound shift in how residents viewed themselves and their neighborhood. The success of initiatives like Solar Panel Appreciation Day fostered pride and participation, encouraging everyone to contribute their talents for collective benefit. The community had not only survived a period of turmoil but had emerged stronger, proving that when people unite behind fair governance, a better future is within reach. In the end, the growth experienced in Sunnyside Acres was a testament to the power of accountability and resilience. Reggie Dubosi's bold challenge to an oppressive regime had set in motion a cascade of positive changes, inspiring all who lived there to believe in the possibility of a fairer, more inclusive community, a true embodiment of karma in action. In the final chapter of his tumultuous journey, Reggie Dubosi reflects on the remarkable transformation that has redefined his life and the community of Sunnyside Acres. What began as an unwarranted lawsuit over solar panels and a relentless campaign of intimidation by Beatrice B. Buttersworth has evolved into a full-blown triumph of justice and innovation over bureaucratic oppression. Reggie stands back and marvels at how far the community has come. The oppressive policies of the former HOA have been replaced with a fresh, responsive governing body dedicated to fairness and transparency. Solar panels now gleam atop rooftops as proud emblems of sustainable energy, and events like Solar Panel Appreciation Day have become annual celebrations of progress. The change is not just superficial, it has reshaped the culture and expectations of every resident in Sunnyside Acres. At a community gathering in the local park, Reggie watches families and neighbors mingling freely, discussing ideas and celebrating the new era that has emerged. The sense of unity is palpable. A direct result of standing up against an authority that once sought to control every aspect of their lives. People now take pride in their ability to voice concerns and effect real change, and Reggie's own personal victory has become a rallying cry for others to follow suit. Even Barry Higgins, the man who once played the role of Mr. Bartholomew Chumley, now strides with purpose, having found employment and re-entered the fold of society as an active, contributing community member. His transformation is symbolic of the broader renewal that has swept the neighborhood, a testament to the idea that no one is beyond redemption when fairness takes root. Reggie reflects on the absurdity of the earlier conflicts, a time when threatening lawsuits and bogus legal threats loomed large over daily life. He realizes that the power of community, combined with relentless persistence, can overturn even the most entrenched systems of control. His solar panels continue to gleam, powering his home and standing as a testament to progress and the enduring spirit of innovation. In a moment of light-hearted yet earnest advice, Reggie chuckles as he recounts the experience to a group of younger residents, cautioning them always to verify the credentials of any legal counsel they encounter. His words, laced with the wisdom of hard-fought battles and the joy of newfound freedom, serve as both a warning and an inspiration. Ultimately, the resolution of the saga is not just a personal victory for Reggie but a renewal of the community's trust in itself. Sunnyside Acres has emerged stronger, more collaborative, and resolute in protecting the rights of its residents. As Reggie gazes out at a neighborhood transformed, a place now defined by innovation, respect, and unity, he feels a deep sense of satisfaction. The storm of injustice has passed, and in its wake lies a bright new beginning where progress is celebrated, and every resident is free to live without fear of arbitrary enforcement. The journey, though fraught with challenges, has set a powerful precedent. Standing up to bullying and tyranny, no matter how entrenched, can lead to profound, lasting change. Reggie's story is now one of hope, a reminder that true progress is achieved not by succumbing to fear, but by uniting against it.